I've never actually heard you talk about the capture of the record. Probably mentions in passing. Never seen film about it. Never heard you talk about it. Uh, so I would love you to just, for my posterity, just describe the capture. You knew you were going to catch a record carp and made it known that you were going to catch a record carp. What are your own personal memories of the lead up to and the capture of that record fish in June 1980?
I've got quite a few, and in fact, most of them are not important. But I did find a very interesting new fact at the weekend, which connects directly to this subject, and I'm quite glad you do want me to rerun that old story, because it is a very old story now. And I think most people know it. But what I read on Saturday night, I found another one of my old diaries from 80. Was it? No, it was 1978. 2 years before I caught the fish, and I was going to be married. Was it 2, 3? Just about a time. It was before my wedding day to Claire, who I was living with at Vale Cottage. And in this diary, I'm going to Guildford to have my wedding suit measured by the tailor. So I go, and I'm looking at my reflection. This is what I'm writing in my diary, and I thought, looking at the reflection, I said, "What a terribly urbane-looking person I look. This is dreadful. I'm going to have to get him to alter it. There's no stains on the sleeves. I'm looking far too smart. I can't possibly get married looking like this. I look like a very ordinary person. Although I would like to be wearing this suit when I catch the record carp." And I've never, I can't remember even thinking that, but it's in the diary.
Right.
I would, when I catch the Redmire carp, when I catch my record carp from Redmire, they were the words. Yeah. I would like to be wearing this suit, and if I'd remembered that I'd written that, I would have worn my 3-piece grey herringbone suit on the day I caught the fish. So that's a new memory I've just rediscovered. So I was building up to it from the late 70s, and I told Rod that I'd, maybe the month before I caught it, I sent him a card, and there's a picture of me holding a big mirror carp, and I said, I'm going to catch the record. I'm going to catch the record at the beginning of this season. And I'd never said anything like that before. And I was so certain it was going to happen. People will kind of say, yeah, you say that every year. I said, no, I don't. If you think back, I've never said that I'm going to do that. Everybody wants to catch the record carp from Redmire, but I remember I was the one who didn't really care, and I just loved being there. And that was always my position there, until that last month before the 1980 season, when I had this really strong intuition that if I played my cards right, I was going to catch this fish. I didn't think it was going to be, it was going to change anything. I just thought it would be a great event. And sure enough, it happened, and so, and it did kind of convince me that there is something in precognition. You get that sort of sense, which I've always had, even as a kid. I would just, nope, not here, it's over there. When I was looking for rare creatures like grass snakes, I would know where to go on a particular day, and sometimes just because of the conditions, but occasionally when there was no clue as to why you would want to go over there and look for a grass snake along that bank where you've never seen one before. So I had that sense, which a lot of people have, and they probably don't listen to the messages all the time, but certainly a lot of my countrymen friends around here, put up perfectly well what I'm talking about. Anyway, this is how I arrived at Redmire that day, on the 15th of June 1980, and there was John Carver and Barry Mills, and there was just the three of us. That was our rota, and we fished up to the 16th midnight, and everybody cast out. Sorry, we didn't fish up to the midnight. We began fishing at the midnight. That would have been sacrilege to cast before midnight. And that's always a ritual, and a well observed ritual. And you'd hear, I remember hearing Rod casting a broad beam at midnight. When I used to fish with him, there was always he changed his bait. You could tell because it was always nearly always completely silent, and you could tell by the sound of the bait going in. This was before the days of heavy lead. So we'd always fish light, and I think I probably fished the lightest because I liked to free line mostly. Anyway, cast out, and I was in Bowskill's pitch at Greenbanks, and at 3:30, it was just beginning to get light. At 3:30, the northeast, because it was midsummer, northeastern horizon was showing with the light beyond it, way round to the northeast, which is what happens at midsummer. And then suddenly there was this sound of silver paper, which my favourite sound. It was just a big roll of, fold of silver paper on the line, and it was hissing. Picked up the rod, and it was a small, it was an 8-pounder, and it came in, and the splashing woke somebody up as it came into the net. And what you got? And I think that was John Carver. It might have been Barry. Barry was closer to me, so he was just down in Pitchford's, and John Carver was across the lake in Keffords. It was either in Keffords or the Stile. But anyway, no one else caught a fish that night, and no one saw much in the way of fish. I did stalk a few up in the shallows, and then the weather changed completely after lunchtime, and a big wind got up, and then a big storm came in from the west, and no, get it right. Which way were the ripples? Yeah, it came in from the west. Remember the ripples? Oh yes, the ripples going up to the shallows, driving anything. That it was always, time to celebrate when everything pointed to the shallows, especially a big wind. That's where the carp would be following. And so I thought, I rubbed my hands, and I reeled in, and I sort of waited for the storm to pass. Idiotically, I was camped under an ash tree. Ash trees are not. I've learned never ever camp under an ash tree, because they're known as widow makers. They're very brittle, big boughs,
Really?
old boughs. Yeah, if I had known what I know now, never ever. And now no one's stupid enough to do that, because the ash trees have got a dieback disease, and they are falling anyway. But yeah, in a storm, they're likely just to break off a big bough. And anyway, I didn't get crushed by a broken branch, but there was lots of creaking and falling of twigs. And then the storm eased, the rain stopped. There'd been lightning, there'd been thunder, everything, and yet the ripples were sort of almost rolling into the shallows. There was almost a curve on them. You could hear it was still washing in, and I started my stalking at about 8:30 in the evening, when everything was sort of settled, and the sky was just beginning to clear, and there was maybe 5 or 6 big fish, quite a few small fish, but 5 or 6 fish between 20, 25, then a couple of 30s. I could just see them, and these big rose-coloured clouds of mud, and you'd see a shape, and you'd see the tail, and then they'd be gone, and then they'd reappear. And I was flicking out a bit of sweet corn to wherever they were going, and once the line shot tight, and I knew which fish it was. I thought that could be 30, and I hesitated before strike. I should have struck first. Instantly, but I didn't, and it went. It just slid away, and then I wound in, put in another grain of sweet corn, 3 grains of sweet corn, bit of plasticine, about a foot from the hook, size 8 hook, and I looked across to the willow where I was fishing. I was fishing behind this little willow, looking across the shallows, and this shape came by. I thought, that's a good fish. Cast out, and as I cast out, I thought, wow, that is a huge fish. And it just landed in front of it. It kept on going. I thought, oh, it's not even noticed it. And then the line started to skate across the surface. And I remember telling rod, when I described this moment, I said it was just like a chub bite when you're free lining with a worm or a slug. You can see the line sort of shaking across the surface before it's sort of settled when a chub suddenly goes for it. And that's what had happened. It had taken the bait on the drop. And I just tightened the rod, and this enormous hole appeared in front of me, this sort of crater, as the fish turned. And you could see the bottom. It wasn't even 3 foot, it's probably 2 foot deep. You could see the bottom as it swirled round in these shallows, and this bow wave went off. And the line stretched into the willow, so I dived straight in, and didn't dive, I just sort of jumped straight in, and then just waded through the silt until I could get a straight line on the fish. And then I kept going away from the fish up to the top of the pool, and so I could keep that line more or less straight, and there was just some huge, kind of swirls and thunderous splashes, until it was coming towards me all the time, coming, and I thought, this is it. And I was shouting for John and Barry to come up and give me a hand, and there was no response. I kept whistling and shouting, and I thought they were asleep. Nothing's happening down in the deep end. It's all up in the shallows, but they didn't know. And then suddenly I heard a John calling out, "I'm coming!" And by that time the fish had come to the willow where I'd hooked the fish, but I was on the right of the willow. The fish came in on the left of the willow and went underneath it. I thought, that's it, I've lost it. And I just didn't even hold it very tight. I just hoped it would sort of back out. And 5 minutes later, after John had run all the way around the top of the lake, all the way down with the landing net, because I'd left my landing net where I'd started fishing, forgetful sort of person, and suddenly the fish just moved out from the willow, because unbeknown to me, Barry had sneaked into the tree and then gave it a sudden shake. It was leaning out maybe 10 yards, 15 yards into the shallows. And the fish went out, and as it went by him, he was looking down, and he said, "It's the old 38." The old 38 was that's the fish that Jack Hilton had caught, Bill Quinlan had caught, and I had caught. But no one had caught it since I had caught it last, which was in 73. People had almost caught it, but they never had. And with each year we'd seen it after that, it seemed bigger, especially after the 76 drought, when red mite almost dried up. And after that, it just, as most of the fish did in red mite after that, it was rejuvenated. It was freshened up when the water came back in, when the level rose, and so it went from 38 to 50 pounds, as we discovered. When it came in, it got stuck in that. It just literally grounded itself in the silt, and I was up to my, not to the top of my boots. I was not quite, and John had waders, and he waded forth with the landing net, and as it came over the net, he kind of lifted, and there was this great swirl, and I just thought, it's gone. The tension went out of the rod as I was bringing it in. There was this bash, and it must have caught the line, and I thought, that's it. Everything had gone slack. I thought, well, it was a drama, but it's all over now. And he said, no, I've got it. And he turned around, and this massive, great. It was just like someone in a hammock. That's what it looked like to me, in silhouette, because the light was nearly gone then. It was 9:15, between 9:30, 10 by then. And there was just this crescent moon. I remember seeing the moon just beyond him, looking across the shallows. So everything came to kind of this perfect climax as he came almost up to his waist in silt, and I dragged him and hauled him out, and I put the rod down and forgot all about it, and then Barry came along, and he helped us lift it over the barbed wire fence, and we put it down in it's lovely moist grass and tussocks, so it was okay. We didn't have an unhooking mat, but it was on kind of marsh really, and we were looking at it, and then Barry lifted the net, and he just said 53 pounds. And it was so kind of confident. 53. I said, no, that's not 50 pound. It is a 50. So he knew straight away it was. Yeah. And then we got the scales, and we hoisted it up, and someone must have had a lighter, but because it was almost dark then, and then when it went round, we zeroed it, and it went all the way round to 51.6. And we discovered later that there were 2 ounces light, so we had to add the other 2 ounces. I had to take it to the weights and measures people before the Record Fish Committee would accept it as the new record. But
Eventually,
after almost a year,
yeah,
even though we had 2 very reliable witnesses, I mean, I could have asked for better than John and Barry. In fact, I wouldn't have landed it without either of them. I needed. It was a combined effort. And I was very grateful that they were there. What I would have done without them, I might have drowned, possibly. But that would have been a fair enough way to go. Like Captain Ahab and Moby Dick, taken down with his final wish, or more or less. But that was it. But it was the thing I remember most is that shape coming round the willow, and the thought that there was this 3 grains of corn. And if you get it in the right place, it's going to see. At least it's going to see it, and it might just go down on them. And it was better than that, and that's always how I felt about it. But it was a bit of a shock. What followed, the amount of interest it stirred up, the amount of excitement it stirred up.
absolutely.
And it wasn't a new fish.
No.
It was a fish that had been caught several times before. I think 7 times before, maybe.
Well, there's always been so much conjecture about would Walker's record ever be eclipsed. That pretty down at Redmire, Chris Yates just put the icing on the cake, didn't it?
Yes, it kind of confirmed that this was a very special place.
Yeah.
There's no doubt there were much bigger fish than that in there that were never caught. That, I think, is the best story of Redmire of all. The fact that there was this probably 4 fish that were way over 50 pounds in there. Certainly 3 that I saw, but Rod reckons he saw another 2, and Jack certainly saw the big one, the big common, the king, and there was this leather that was probably maybe 60, which I hooked on a mussel once. Not a mussel, a cockle. And I was on my own then. That I would have landed that if I'd, because it was late in the autumn and there was no weed, and I was just beginning to make some headway with it, and then hook fell down. If I'd used a different hook, I think I would have got that fish and not put it in the muscly bit of the cockle. That was the thing.
But just to put the final word on that, I mean, Rod described it as, and both you and Redmire had you by the throat, didn't it? It overtook real life as far as you were concerned.
Yeah.
At one time, Redmire.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it was quite harsh on any relationship, which is what I discovered to my cost, as I lost a very lovely person through Redmire. Not Claire. Claire came after. Mind you, she's gone now.
Bless you.
Bless her.
Chris. Lovely story. Thank you.